Hello to all bird owners out there. Today, we're going to talk about a topic closely related to your feathered friend's health. The food you feed your bird can directly affect its ability to fight off diseases. In particular, the protein content matters a lot. A recent study published in Molecular Ecology used solid experimental data to show us feeding birds a high-protein diet helps their immune systems prepare in advance. Even if they get infected with a pathogen, they'll suffer less and recover faster. Let's break down the science behind this today. First, let me ask you a question. What do you usually feed your bird? Is it mixed grains from the supermarket, or do you specifically add ingredients like egg yolks or dried insects? Many of you might think, as long as my bird likes it and gets full, the nutritional content isn't that important. But the study mentions that more and more wild birds now rely on food provided by humans, like the feed and bird feeders. The nutritional quality of this food, especially the ratio of protein to fat, quietly changes birds' immunity. This study focused specifically on this issue. It used canaries and a common avian pathogen for experiments. The results are highly relevant to our daily bird keeping. First, let's get to know the villain in the experiment, Mycoplasma gallisepticum, or MG for short. It's a common bacterium in birds. Whether it's wild sparrows, finches, or pet canaries and parrots, all can be infected. The most obvious symptom after infection is eye inflammation. In severe cases, the eyes can swell shut, affecting eating and flying. For wild birds, this can be life-threatening. It also causes great suffering for pet birds. The research team chose this pathogen because it's similar to the health risks we might encounter in daily bird keeping. This makes the experimental results more practical. The experiment used domestic canaries. Why canaries? Because their response to MG is almost identical to that of wild house finches. The pathogen load after infection, antibody production, and severity of symptoms are all similar. Additionally, canaries are easy to raise in a laboratory, making it convenient to observe and record data. The researchers divided the canaries into two groups. One fed a high-protein diet, another a high-lipid diet. There was also a control group that was not infected with the pathogen. It's important to note that both diets had the same calorie content. This ensures that the results weren't affected by the birds eating more or less. The only difference was the ratio of protein to fat. The high-protein group had 1 part fat to 4 parts protein, while the high-lipid group had 4 parts fat to 1 part protein. These ratios fall within the range of both natural bird diets and human-provided bird food. They are not extreme cases. Before the formal MG infection, the birds were fed the experimental diets for 17 days. These 17 days weren't for nothing. The researchers found that the gene expression of the two groups of birds already showed significant differences. The high-protein group had much higher expression levels of immune-related genes, such as genes that produce antibodies and regulate inflammatory responses. Simply put, the immune system of the high-protein group had already entered a standby state in advance. It was like knowing it might encounter a pathogen soon, and having made preparations. In contrast, the high-lipid group had lower expression of immune genes. Instead, the expression of ribosomal genes related to protein synthesis was more active. The immune system wasn't really warmed up. This point is crucial. It shows that diet's impact on immunity starts before infection, not just when the bird gets sick. Next, both groups of birds were inoculated with the MG pathogen. Guess what happened? The pathogen load in the two groups was similar. It means their ability to kill pathogens, known as resistance, was the same, but the severity of symptoms and recovery speed differed drastically. The high-lipid group had more severe eye inflammation. Their eye score, an indicator used to measure inflammation severity, was much higher than that of the high-protein group, and their recovery took 30 days. In contrast, The high-protein group had milder inflammation and recovered in an average of 21 days. This ability to be infected but have mild symptoms and recover quickly is scientifically called tolerance. The study clearly states that a high-protein diet significantly improved the bird's tolerance. Why is this the case? The key lies in the changes in gene expression after infection. After infection, the high-lipid group had a stressful surge in immune gene expression. Genes related to inflammation suddenly were highly expressed. It was as if the immune system panicked and overreacted, leading to more severe inflammation. On the other hand, the high-protein group had gentle changes in immune gene expression. The inflammatory response was controlled just right. It was enough to fight the pathogen without harming the bird's own body. To use an analogy, imagine two people facing a fire. One calmly and orderly puts out the fire, while the other panics and splashes water randomly. The former can control the fire faster, while the latter may cause more chaos. The immune system of the high-protein group is like the calm fire extinguisher. The study also found that after infection, the high-lipid group had problems with metabolism-related genes. For example, the expression of insulin receptor genes and leptin receptor genes became disordered. It means their metabolic systems were under constant stress. Metabolism and immunity are actually closely linked. Metabolic disorders can further worsen inflammation and slow down recovery. In contrast, the expression of metabolic genes in the high-protein group was relatively stable with no such disorder. This also helped them recover faster from infection. Some of you might ask, "My bird isn't a canary, it's a parrot or a thrush. Does this result still apply?" Although the study used canaries, it mentions an important point. The changes in immune gene expression caused by diet are similar to the disease-resistant mechanisms that wild finches have developed through long-term evolution. For example, wild house finches, after long-term exposure to MG, also regulate immune gene expression to improve tolerance, and a high-protein diet allows canaries to quickly show similar changes. This suggests that diet's impact on bird immunity may be a universal rule. It is applicable to both pet birds and wild birds. Another point you might care about: how much protein should we feed our birds daily? The study doesn't give a specific number, but it does offer a suggestion. If you feed wild birds, it's best to provide a variety of foods, because birds will choose based on their own needs. For example, they need more protein during the spring breeding season and more fat in autumn to store energy. Letting them choose for themselves helps balance nutrition and optimize immune function. For pet birds, we can appropriately add high-protein foods to their daily feed, such as cooked egg yolks, defatted dried insects, or a small amount of fish. This is especially important when the bird is recovering from illness or during seasonal changes, when it's more likely to get sick. Adding more protein helps its immune system fight risks more effectively. It's also important to note that this doesn't mean fat is bad. Birds also need fat to provide energy. The key is to have the right ratio. If you feed your bird a long-term high-lipid diet, such as large amounts of sunflower seeds or peanuts, it may not only make the bird fat, but also reduce its disease tolerance. If it gets infected with a pathogen, the symptoms may be more severe. The high-lipid group in the study is a perfect example. Although it didn't affect pathogen killing, the severe inflammation and slow recovery caused great suffering to the birds. The significance of this study isn't just to tell us high-protein diets are good. More importantly, it helps us understand that diet affects bird immunity by regulating gene expression. It is not simply by eating more nutritious food. It shows us that choosing food for our birds daily isn't just about satisfying their appetites. It's about paving the way for their health. Especially now, many pet birds stay indoors for a long time. They may have fewer chances to be exposed to pathogens than wild birds, but if they do encounter pathogens, the strength of their immunity will directly affect the outcome. Finally, I want to say that keeping birds requires care. Every detail, from the cage environment to food choices, can affect the bird's health. I hope today's sharing gives you a new understanding of bird diets and immunity. If you have tips for adding protein to your bird's diet, or experiences with your bird recovering from illness, feel free to share them in the comments. Let's learn together to make our feathered friends healthier and happier. That's all for today's sharing. Thank you for listening.